Hi there, Cindy Pope here at the Cool Tools Studio. I wanted to show you a project using nested templates and the marquee stone setting punch. Here are the tools we're going to need to make these layered stone settings from EZ960. I'm going to use distilled water and olive oil, rolling frames. I have applicators that are disposable and they come in a pack of 10, sanding sponges, these great silver ball earring wires which look really pretty with silver jewelry. I'm going to use the marquee stone setting punches, and I'm going to use the largest spinel and the next largest one. Tweezers, 3 tiles. I'm going to use a large tile and 2 small tiles. And I'm going to use the wavy oval template, which is a really great template. I've used it in a lot of things. Little tiny brush, always a scalpel. And then on the original, I used the rose vice versa texture, and we're going to try the plume one with this time, and a roller. So what I'm going to do is we're going to start with the earrings. So I'll start with the smallest stone. And these are beautiful blue spinels, just stunning. So I'm going to turn them upside down, and then I'm going to take my rolling frames and I'm going to put them on, and I think it's 9, so I'm going to start with 9. And I'm going to roll it over the surface, and if it hits, you want to add one. Now I'm using these curio frames, so I can just add 1 card. Okay, so that rolls fine. So that's 10. I have learned that I can go with 1 less. I can go with 9, so I'm going to go with 9. And that's my recommendation on most of the stones. The bigger you get, as your clay rolls, and you join it, it's going to be a little thicker. So now we're going to do these earrings. And what I do is I make myself a little chart of what shapes I'm going to use, because sometimes I forget and I cut the wrong one. So I'm going to use a 4 and a 2 from this template. And I number 1 is smallest and 6 is largest. And if you're doing layered pieces, it's always a good idea to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with 5 cards, and I'm going to roll down to 4, and I'm going to use the plume texture, which is fairly low profile. If it was a really deep texture, which I wouldn't do for this project, I would roll down to 3. So we're going to start with our 5. I've got my EZ960 clay ready. A little bit of oil on my rolling pin, which is silicone, so it's very slippery and not sticky. It's a really nice rolling pin. It comes lots of colors and sizes too. And it's got ends that you can store your tools in. It's a really nice roll. I'm going to pick it up, remove this, put the plume texture down. And a lot of people put a ton of oil on here, and I don't like to get too much oil on my clay. And what I learned in my Rio certification a long time ago from my teachers, he said he likes to put the oil on the surface of the clay. So that's what I'm going to do. And now we're going to go down to 4. When I go down to 4, I'm going to roll this way. Top to bottom, and middle to top. And then I just press, in case I missed one little part, I just press down, not too hard. And then I roll off to a tile because I like to cut on a tile. And I'm kind of letting it fall away. And now I'm going to cut, but first I want to cut the insides. So I'm using the 4x7 because I'm going to use a 4x8 stone. And Karen had a really good idea of just kind of running it through a lubricant first. And then I can also pick the parts that I'm going to use the stone cutout. If you have a hard time centering cutouts, which is a real challenge for me, I think doing the cutouts first is a good idea. Especially with these different stone settings that are not just circles. It's even harder with those. And I'm going to wrap up even the littlest bit that I took out. And now I can go through and do a cutting, and from my chart I know I'm going to go 4 on the top. And this little oval wavy has it's slightly pointier at the top, and I like that to be where I do my hole. And so this way it's just centering is so much easier. Still a challenge for me though. And everybody has challenges in certain parts of the work, and so you figure out the easiest way to do it to avoid mistakes. And the reason I'm doing this on a white tile is the blade will slide over the surface. You can also use the clay pick. Many of my friends use the clay pick. And I'm also trying to center the hole up and down the same as here. So this middle bump is in the middle of the cutout. So that's what I'm trying to do. When I cut, I tried to hold securely in 2 spots. So my template doesn't move. It's really pretty texture. I think it's going to be awesome. So I'm going to move this aside, and I'm going to actually let it air dry a little bit. And then we're going to do the backs, which are going to be 2s, and they're going to be 5 cards, which means a lot of the bulk is going to be in a smaller piece, which makes your earrings lighter and it makes them less expensive to make. And a back layer does the same as a front layer. So you can see here, we're much smaller. So this one I'm going to do 5. Remember our stone measured 10. So I'm doing 5.5 because I rolled texture down, and 5 because I found that I got a good fit on my stone doing that. I have another tile. I'm going to put a little oil on there. Don't need a lot of oil for this, but you want to be able to pull it up. And I've got a little bit of smudge here that I got into my clay. And so I'm going to, and I just really needed to mark my template. I could not remember which sizes I was using. I think a lot of times in metal clay you don't have to really plan ahead, but when I'm doing these layered pieces I always want to plan ahead. And you don't have to do the same shape. I liked mirroring this shape, but you could do a marquee shape, you could do a teardrop shape. The back does not have to be the same as the front. I just thought on this project it looked good. And I could use a much smaller piece of clay. I am going to use this for the pendant also. If you weigh your pieces afterwards, you'll know exactly how much clay you used. But when rolling, you need to have more to get the roll than the clay of the actual piece, the size of the weight of the actual piece. Pulling away. So this top one is dried a little bit. And the back one, I'm going to add some slip on it to get it to start getting ready to join. So I want this texture just a little bit dry. I'm going to add the back, and what I'm going to do then is I'm going to punch through both layers. Instead of trying to figure out where to punch here, I'm going to join first and then punch through. An EZ960 is a really supple, nice clay, and that works really good for this project. So I'm going to add a little water, and then we're going to pick up slip right here. And this picks up slip beautifully with just a little bit of water. So I'm actually not using slip, I'm using water, and I'm creating slip on the surface of the clay. And with this clay, that's a great way to do it. If you're using Phoenix, you're probably going to want to use full-on clay or slip. And I like to do this in my hand so I have a little control. I'm gonna add a little smudge back there. But my refining, most of my refining I do when it's fully dry. I don't have, my fine motor skills are not quite as good as some people, and my preference is dry refining. And again, I want the little pointy part going up. And then I'm going to move it around till it's centered. And then just give it a little pressure. And then turn it upside down. Once I've turned it upside down, I can go ahead and cut the next hole. I'm going to put that oil down again. And this way it's perfectly made. And I pre-cut it so I know it's centered now. It's easy to cut inside a hole. So now it's ready for me to set the stone. I'm going to show you that, and then we're going to complete the other one. So the way I like to set these stones is I'm going to take, let me move this one aside. Through the magic of video, it'll be automatically done in the next part. So what I'm going to do is I am going to set from the top, and I like to put this stone with the point up. The hardest part about this is keeping the stone flat, so I'm going to make it flat when I start. So it's sitting flat side down. I'm going to turn it over, and I'm going to tap it just a tiny bit. Oops. Enough so it's going to set, but not all the way. So I can kind of turn it over and see if it looks good. Because the hardest part for me is making sure it's flat on top. So it looks good. So I'm going to turn it all the way down and push. Stone's set beautifully. The table is right there. And so we're going to go ahead and dry it, and then we'll refine and put a hole in it. Okay, now we're going to work on our larger pendant. And I made a smaller pendant too, but I really like the look of this one. And in this case, I have a smaller bezel on the back, which saves a lot of money and weight, and smaller on the top and an outside frame. So this one has 3 layers. And I did a plan ahead of time, so I'm going to use a 6 and a 5. So this is a 5x10 stone. Again, I'm going to put it on its face so the point is up. So this is 9. That's what the other one was. Oops, I'm definitely running into the stone. So I'm going to try 10. Whoops. And I'm going to, I have a 1 in this set. And I'm still hitting it. So let's try adding a 2. So that would be 5, 4, and 2 would be 11. 1 more. And remember, I'm going to subtract 1 at the end because of all these layers. Okay, that's perfect. So I've got 12 layers, but I'm actually going to use 11. And what I'm going to do is the back layer is going to be 4, The middle layer is going to be 4 and the top layer is going to be 3. That's 11, yes. So let's get my 3 out. And I do need the 5 here because I'm rolling a texture on the top. Okay, so now we're going to make the pendant. In this one, the middle layer is the biggest one, the textured layer is next, and the back one is smaller. So the top textured layer is 5, and that's what I'm going to do first. And I'm going to take 5 and I'm going to roll down to 4. We're going to oil our surface a little bit. And then we're going to put the 5 on. And I had a nice tall patty. And then I'm rolling and flipping and going different directions. And I always end up putting my texture on the silicone side that I last flipped over because the silicone side is just beautiful. So we're going to add our plume texture. I'm going to put oil on the surface of the clay. Instead of on the clay. On a deeper texture, I think it's more important you maybe put some oil on the texture too. And then I'm going to take the 4, which is 1 card lower. We are going to roll hard one way, roll hard up, and now we are going to take it onto the tile. I'm going to pat it a little bit. I see a couple little bubbles and stuff to make sure I've got a really nice roll. I really hate re-rolling. First time is the best one to get it, but trust me, we all re-roll multiple times. And then I'm just kind of letting it fall away. And you see, you didn't need that whole bunch of oil on the texture. Okay, so we're going to find where we want the cut to be. And this is the best way to do it is using your template as a frame. Then when I do that, remember I have to cut my hole first because I cannot get it centered for my life. And I'm going to put it, so it is tilted a little bit, but because I did not cut the outside first, I can just go like this. And it's just a challenge for me. Not all of you are going to have that issue. But I think with a marquee with the 2 points, I think when I do a hoop earring with a cutout, I always do the cutout first. And I do a lot of cutout earrings. Okay, so I've got this first layer done. I'm going to put it aside. And it's about maybe 4.5 cards because with the texture that I rolled down. And then I'm going to do the middle one 3 cards, and that's plain. And I think it frames the piece nicely with having a plain middle. And that's actually the biggest piece, which is why I'm making it 3 cards. Because if I made this totally solid and made all the big pieces really thick, it would be heavy and it would be more expensive to make. And we will weigh at the very end so you can see exactly how much these different pieces weigh. When you go thinner, like 3 cards, you can always use the same technique with kind of letting it fall away because you don't want to mar that pretty surface of the clay. So now I'm going to do the 6. And since it's plain, it doesn't really matter where it is. And remember, I'm going to punch through, so I don't need to put a punch in here. First couple times I did this, I tried to make the punch ahead of time. And really, I like to join the top 2 pieces first and then punch through. And then we'll add the back piece and punch through again. So I'm going to wet and wet this, and then I'm going to wet this, and then we're going to join these two together. Just a little bit of water. And I like to hold it in my hand because I don't want to be pressing down and messing up my texture. All the Cool Tools clays I've used, really the texture is, stays pretty well even when I'm doing this. A lot of times I do dry construction. I would do this dry, but because I'm going to punch through, I have to do it before. And EZ960, which is one of my favorite clays to use, it picks up slip really beautifully when you use this little applicator with a nap on it. And that nap is like a brush brushing up the slip. And I want to put the point going up. So I'm going to gently put it on. And you see I didn't really mess up that plume texture at all, but I'm pushing it and moving it until I've got it right where I want, and then I'm going to give it, a little bit of pressure, because pressure is what helps the two parts join together. Again, this is tricky for me to get it centered. And now I'm going to cut through one more time. And I have a hole that's straight already, so that makes it so much easier. Now we're just going to do that back piece, and the back piece is going to be pretty small and thicker. So I've got 4 cards and 3 cards, so 7. So I'm going to make this, I want to be 11 cards. So I'm going to do 4 more cards. So really the hardest piece to do is that top, and the other pieces are just pretty easy because okay, so now I'm going to put this on the back, and then I'm going to punch through the 3rd layer. And this has had time to stiffen up a little bit. So we're going to pick up our slip on both sides. And every clay has different properties. Like some clays, you're going to use actual clay or slip, but this one, EZ960, you really don't have to. With Phoenix and some of the base metals, I actually will use straight clay or slip that I've created. But EZ960 joins really nicely. Picking it up. You could also use a tissue blade. I use my scalpel for everything. And then I want the little pointy part to be on the top. And I'm going to try to center it. Press it down a little bit, and then we're going to flip it because we have a 3rd layer to go through, and then we're just going to set our stone. And with this one, I'm going to put a little oil on the stone setter because I have a little clay on there from the last 2 cuts. And Karen has a video how to use all these stone setters, so that's how I learned. Okay, now we're ready to set our stone. I'm going to put the stone flat side down. I'm going to carefully pick this up. And so although it's a big piece, we've saved a lot of clay by putting a small back bezel. So I'm going to put this on here, and you want the point to go up. I'm just going to press down a little bit and then turn it over to make sure I like how it looks. And I have a hard time seeing where that table is. I think we're good. I'm going to push it down maybe a little bit over there. I think the reason I chose the marquee is because I think it's the hardest one to set of all the stones. And so now I'm going to give it a good push, and then it's really set. So what happens is where it's a little bit longer in the ends, it's setting it in the clay. And there we go. And I'm going to dry it, and then we're going to put holes in it and refine a tiny bit, but you don't need a lot of refining on this, and fire. Okay, my pieces are off the heating surface. I'm going to put a hole in the tops of these, and then I'm going to do a bezel for this one. And this is a really interesting, elegant bezel that I learned from Hadar Jacobson. She forms them by hand, but I use the precision circle cutters because I think they're fabulous. I'm going to go 5 cards. And when you're using your precision cutters, always cut them on a tile because you don't want to mar your silicone mat or your Teflon. Silicone mars, but Teflon really, really mars, so you just have to be careful to do your cutting on a surface that you don't roll on. So I've got a circle. I'm not going to cut the inside out. I'm going to dry it on the piece, and then I'm going to drill it out. I'm going to create a little bit of slip. And I don't pre-make a lot of slip for EZ960 because it doesn't really need it. So I like to make it a little oval and a little pointier at the top. Just give it a little different shape. I'm shaping it up a little bit. And I can shape it more after it's dried. And then I'm going to take a scalpel and I cut a little V on the bottom. And now I'm going to rehydrate the surface because this surface needs to be ready to accept fresh clay. And you could put these on before you dry, but I'm not so good with handling the wet clay. So I'm just really rehydrating it. And if I were using Phoenix, what I'd do is I'd use like full-on clay to join this. But with EZ960, I can just rehydrate and use slip. Okay. So once I've got it on there, the hard part for me is putting it in the middle, but I'm going to try to work it out. So I pushed it down, and now I'm just going to take this and I'm just going to join the 2 pieces of clay a little bit on the front and on the side. And I also put a ball where this bezel is. That's going to make it more secure at the end. We're going to put this in the heating surface, but you don't want to put it down flat. You want it to be hanging over the heating surface, so it's going to dry right where it is. Because if I put it in the heating surface, then the circle would not be in the right place. Okay, I'm going to refine this a tiny bit, and then we're going to put a hole in it. When I refine, I like to use a baby wipe with this clay. I use a baby because I'm just smoothing the sides. And then I'm going to take and reinforce this joint, although with EZ960, it probably wouldn't be a problem, but I just have a rule that I reinforce 2 to 3 times. And now I'm going to put the hole in. And what I do with my holes is I'm going to take a tiny ball burr from my ball burr set. And I'm going to cut that tiny hole and then do a bigger one on top. It's much easier to fix if your tiny hole is not in the wrong place. And then I kind of move up one size at a time until I'm happy with the size of the hole. You don't need a giant hole for ear wires, but I like the holes to be as big, I have these out of order, as big as it can be, because your earring will swing a lot nicer if the bigger the hole is. Some designs, it's just not going to work to have it, but you can go bigger with EZ960 because it's a 960 clay, and 960 clays are a lot stronger. So once I've got it the right size, I'm going to take my stone setting burr and curve the edges, which is what I do with all my earring holes. And I think my earrings the hole looks better and they swing better. The circle swings a lot better. So there we go. All right, I've taken this off the drying surface and my piece is really, really hard. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refine it and sand it a little bit. And then I'm going to cut the hole. Now I don't want to add any moisture to it before I drill the hole because it is really solid. But you can just change the shape and smooth some things out with a sanding sponge. Or if you use files, everybody has some different favorite tools. I really like sanding sponges, and I do a lot of wet sanding, but I can't wet sand now because I do not want to get this moist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill a hole, and I'm going to start with one that's probably about half as big as I'm going to want. And it's like a starter hole. And you can also start with a little tiny one. And I'm supporting it really well with my finger. And EZ960 is really easy to drill like this. Unbelievably strong when it's fired. And then I'm going to go up 2 sizes. What I don't want is I don't want to get so big that I'm going to break the top. But you can go pretty close. And I'm holding this securely because I am going to go back and wet reinforce afterwards. But I got to get this hole done. So this is about as big as I want to get with the ball burrs, but I am going to go in with my stone setting burr. And rounds it, and again, everything moves better. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, it looks pretty good, but I do want to refine with this brush and I've created slip from what I sanded, so that's going to be just plenty. And I'm just going to smooth everything out, and this is encouraging the join. And if I see any place else where it needs smoothing. And with this clay, I just move this napped brush over the top, it just makes a really beautiful smooth surface. Okay, I'm going to dry it, and then we're going to go ahead and fire. When your pieces are ready to go, you can clean the stones with alcohol and fire on a full ramp to 1675 for 2 hours. I want to tell you, if you haven't fired EZ960 before, I would recommend doing a little test strip first, or put a test strip with it, because kilns do have variation in their temperature, and it's always a good idea to test your kiln with any clay. I wanted to show you how much these weigh and how much clay you'll be needing. So this one is 2.7 grams. So I like the earrings to be under 4. And the pendant, and it's quite a large pendant, is just about 12 grams of clay. So that shows you could make almost with 30 grams, probably all of these. Thank you so much for joining me at the Cool Tools Studio.